Hi everybody, Natasha Buttler, Marketing Lecturer for JCU, and this is BU1108, BU2108 Marketing Matters, and this is Week 5, Part 4, where we're talking about consumer and business behaviour. Now, in the first 3 videos, we considered the buying decision-making process for consumers, and we considered the level of involvement of the process for different types of purchasers and influencers. In this video, we're now going to examine the buying decision-making process from a business perspective. Because, of course, a business market, or B2B, operates very differently to consumers. And this consists of companies doing business with each other, as opposed to the consumer market, where organisations do businesses with customers. Business marketing is often based on long-term, mutually profitable relationships across members of the marketing channel. Business products can be technically complex, and the market often consists of sophisticated buyers and a relatively small customer population. Although B2B marketing employs the same concepts as marketing to consumers, such as defining target markets, understanding buying behaviour, and developing effective marketing mixes, there are some structural and behavioural differences in business markets. One of the big things that we need to consider is, as we just spoke about, is that products can be technically complex, and there's often a number of buyers or decision makers involved in the decision-making process. That means that the decision-making process for business markets can be quite lengthy and complex compared to the consumer-making decision-making process. So we're going to look at that in a little bit more detail. So when it comes to a company market, a B2B market, that is where, as I just spoke about, where companies are marketing to other companies. And we need to, as a company, selling to other companies, we need to recognize how our product will influence other associated firms, such as wholesalers, retailers, and even other manufacturers. Business products can be commodities, such as corn or a bolt or a screw, which are purchased in such large quantities that buying methods differ significantly from the consumer market. For most business marketers, the goal is to understand customer needs and to provide value-added exchange that shifts from attracting customers to keeping customers and developing relationships. There are 4 categories in the business markets. That is the producer, reseller, government, and institutional. And for the remainder, we're going to discuss each of these types of markets. Producer markets are individuals and organisations that purchase products for the purpose of making a product by using them to produce other products or by using them within their operations. So this includes buyers of raw materials, as well as purchases of semi-finished and finished items that is then used to produce other products. Manufacturers tend to be geographically concentrated and where they can be served more efficiently. A wide range of industries make up the producer markets, and this includes agriculture, forestry, fisheries, mining, construction, transportation, communication, and utilities. Reseller markets consist of intermediaries who buy finished goods and then they resell them for profit. Resellers don't change the physical characteristics of the product except for the occasional minor alteration. Retailers purchase product for resale to final consumers. When making a purchase decision, resellers consider several factors, and that is the level of demand to determine the quantity and the price levels of what they'll purchase, the amount of space they need required to hold the product, the supplier's ability to provide adequate quantities when and where they want it, how easy it is to place orders, and the availability of technical assistance and any training programs. Government markets, on the other hand, include federal, state, and locally operated governments that buy goods and services to support their internal operations and to provide products to their constituents. The government spends billions of dollars every year on a wide range of goods and services. The types and quantities of products that government's markets purchase reflect societal demands on government agencies. Many firms do not try to sell to the government because of the complex buying procedures necessitated to the government's public accountability. It is a lot of work trying to sell into the government. However, if you can get it done, it can also be really lucrative. Institutional markets are organisations such as charitable, educational, community, or other non-business places, or other places that have non-business-like goals, such as churches, universities, hospitals, civic clubs, etc. Because institutions have different goals and fewer resources than other markets, marketers may need to use special marketing activities to serve this market. But it all comes back to understanding who your target market is, who your audience is that you're communicating with and selling to. Business buying behaviour then refers to, of course, that purchase behaviour of producers, government units, institutions and resellers, similar to what we spoke about with the consumer decision-making process. Similar to the consumer decision-making process, the organisation's buyer centres are affected by the organisation's size, the market position, the volume and the types of products purchased, and the firm's managerial philosophy. The buying centre is the group of people within the organisation who make the business purchase decisions. So the buying centre is similar to the roles that we discussed as part of the consumer buying decision-making process. And this includes the users, the influencers, the buyers, the deciders, and the gatekeepers. They can be the tricky ones to try to get past, that all influence and are all involved in that buying decision-making process. Because the end user may not actually be the person who makes the final decision on what gets purchased within an organisation. Again, the influencer or the buyer, the person who actually makes the purchase, may not even be involved in the decision-making process at all, with the exception of actually making that purchase. So again, understanding that buying centre and who's who in the business and those roles definitely helps us as marketers and as salespeople understand how we can get our sales through. So there's a couple of different types of business purchases. We have a new task purchase, and this is when the organisation makes an initial purchase of an item that's going to be used to perform a new job or a new problem. Kind of makes sense, doesn't it? A new task purchase, something that's new that we haven't used before. We quite often do a straight rebuy purchase. So this is a routine purchase of the same products under approximately the same terms by a business buyer, such as photocopy paper. Or else we might be looking at a modified rebuy purchase. So a new task purchase that's changed on subsequent orders, or when the requirements of a straight rebuy purchase have been modified. So for example, when we're needing to go back and rebuy laptop computers for our organisation, because technology has changed over time, we would slightly modify that rebuy purchase to take into account the technological changes that have happened since our initial new task purchase. Similar to the consumer buying decision-making process, the business decision-making process also has 5 steps, and that starts with that problem recognition again. We then move through, as businesses, to develop the product specifications that we need to solve the problem. We search and evaluate for solutions through possible products or suppliers, select the product, supplier, and then we order the product for purchase, and finally evaluate the performance of both the product and the supplier. So very similar to what we looked at with the consumer decision-making process. And like the consumer decision-making process, there's also a number of possible influences that can impact the business decision-making process. So first of all, again, as we saw with the consumer decision-making process, we start with that problem. We recognise that a problem or a need exists. And this could be individuals in the buying centre, such as the users, the influencers, or the buyers who recognise this. It could be identified by external sources, such as sales representatives or advertisements. And the problem may arise under a variety of different circumstances. So it could be because a machine has malfunctioned, it could be that an existing product has been modified, or it might be that we're needing to introduce a new product overall. The second stage is the development of those product specifications that requires the buying centre participants to assess the problem or need and then determine what will be necessary to resolve or satisfy it. So we look at those users and the influencers to provide further information and advice on how the product will be used and how that product will help solve the issue. And by assessing and describing the needs, the organisation or the buying centre should be able to establish product specification, which then leads us to evaluating potential products and suppliers to solve that problem. Some organisations engage in value analysis or an evaluation of each component of a potential purchase. So where we might look at the quality, design, materials, and so on. Some vendors can be eliminated because they just cannot supply the needed quantities, or because we know from past experience they have poor delivery or service records. The products on the list generated in the search stage are evaluated to determine which ones, if any, meet the product specifications. And the firms or organisations evaluate current and potential suppliers as well by using this vendor analysis. And once we've gone through that analysis and we've looked at our potential products, we then make that selection. So results of deliberations and assessments in the third stage are used during this fourth stage of selection to select the product to be purchased and from which supplier we're going to purchase it from. Once we've done that, our product is ordered. So multiple sourcing occurs when the buyer selects and uses several different suppliers or several suppliers to provide the same product. Sole sourcing, on the other hand, is a situation where an organisation decides to use only one supplier. And the actual purchase takes place and the following details are finalised. So that is the terms of the purchase and in credit arrangements. So because quite often dealing with businesses, we don't pay for things up front. There might be trading terms such as 7 days or 30 days a credit. We then need to discuss the delivery dates and how it's going to be delivered and any technical assistance arrangements that need to be made. And as per with the consumer decision-making process, once we've made that selection, we evaluate it again. We evaluate the product and the supplier, comparing that back to our specifications. So has the product done what we wanted it to do? Did the suppliers meet our specifications? Did the supplier perform as we required them to? Do our specifications need adjusting? So these 5 steps are not primarily used. These 5 steps are primarily used for new purchases, but several stages, if not all of them, would be used for a straight or a modified rebuy. So generally, we probably would not need to quite go through so much as the product specification and reviewing the potential products if we're doing that rebuy. And if you look in the textbook, figure 5.4 gives you a really nice summary of that 5-stage decision-making process for businesses and the possible environmental, organisational, interpersonal and individual influences that we have on the decision-making process as well. Because of course, we need to take those things into consideration. And as we've discussed previously, we also need to take into consideration the environmental forces, because those environmental forces not only impact our marketing mix, they also impact our buying decision making. So these basic macro environmental factors that we need to consider as when we're doing our pestle analysis, looking at the influences that we're going to have on our marketing, is we consider the political, environmental, economical, socio-cultural and the technological factors. So of course the environmental looks at the competitive environment, the legal and ethical factors. So for example, climate change adjustments, new laws, regulations, perceptions of responsibility and fairness. We could also consider the organisational factors that looks at the company's objectives, our purchasing policies and our resources, as well as the size and composition of our buying centre. There's interpersonal factors that we need to consider, such as the relationships between people in the buying centre. And quite often salespeople work to build tight relationships with people in the buying centre so that they can ensure longevity or long-term relationships. Then we also need to take into consideration the individual factors, such as our personal characteristics of the people in the buying centre, such as age, their personality, education level, the tenure and the position that they have within the organisation. All of these things influence the business buying decision-making process. And for us as marketers, we need to be aware of those things if we're going to pitch or develop marketing plans to target and sell our products to other businesses. The value chain in business-to-business marketing considers where the customer demand and where the customer can be end consumers or an organisation. Products pass through various different processes and activities that add value with the supply chain. For example, manufacturing, labeling, packaging, warehousing, transportation and distribution. Organisations involved in the supply chain include dealers, agents, distributors and resellers. And the supply chain as a whole is a value chain that gives more value than the individual value sum provided by individual organisations contributing. The goal of value chain is to maximize value creation. And some of the things that we consider in the B2B value chain is that that decision-making process really is complex. The products and applications are highly technical. B2B marketers address a small number of customers, but they require much larger product quantities. The personal relationships between organisations, between the seller and the buying centre, can have critical impact. And businesses no longer compete one-on-one, but the value chains do compete. So everybody, oh my goodness, what a big topic that we've got through. Well done if you've got all the way to the end. So by now you should be able to understand the stages of the consumer decision-making process and describe the level of involvement and types of consumer problem solving. You should now be able to understand and explore the situational, psychological and social factors that influence consumer behaviour. We've spoken about those business markets and the different types of business markets, which also consider the different characteristics that we have in business behaving and being able to recognize the different stages of the business decision-making process. So look, I've loved spending time with you now. Let me know your thoughts. What did you enjoy? What did you get out of this particular topic? And as always, let me know if you've got any questions, comments or feedback. And also to please make sure that you refer to the textbook just to reinforce everything that has been spoken about in today's session. I look forward to seeing you next time.